Good day, everybody. My name is Carlos. Welcome to My Life Without Limits. Another great episode we have unfolding here. And before we start with our wonderful guest today, I want to introduce all of you to our host that is always here with me and the brain of the podcast, as I always say. And so welcome, Leah. How are you doing today?
Good. Thank you. How are you? How was your birthday weekend?
It was good. I
Yeah.
I enjoyed it. I tried to not go too overboard and just enjoying it and resting and having a great Thanksgiving as well. So how about your Thanksgiving?
Yeah, it was lovely. We
Yeah.
got together with some family for a little hot dog roast at Laurier Park, and it was beautiful on Sunday. Absolutely beautiful. So it was nice to take advantage of that.
That's amazing. Very
Yeah.
happy that you enjoyed it. I didn't have my turkey, but I ended up having
No, we didn't either.
good
We had
food
hot
too
dogs.
as well. So good food as well. But yeah, so let's move on to our guest, which you were able to find, I believe, as well.
Well, yeah, I
as-
found her, but I've known her all along,
Oh,
which
okay,
is
so
funny.
you
It's just
guys know each other for a while now then.
well, we
Okay.
have through Cerebral Palsy Alberta work.
Oh,
And
perfect.
I didn't put the dots together, which my ADHD brain often doesn't. So yes, very happy to have Katie McMillan here. Her daughter Kelty has been part of our organization since, oh my God, I remember in 2013 when she did a fundraiser in Edmonton, a hamburger fund. Oh my,
Oh,
I just, yeah.
I remember
Yeah.
Kelty. Yeah.
Crazy
Yeah,
even
Kelty was-
seeing her.
Kelty was born in 2010, and I think we joined this
Yeah.
Cerebral Palsy Association of Alberta like that same year.
Yeah.
I think, and have been members ever since. But yeah, when your name popped up, when you reached out, I recognized it right away. But I didn't remember the context, so it's
Right.
not just your ADHD brain. I had to go back and do a little email search and found that we had absolutely communicated. You're right, in 2013 about Kelty's
Yeah.
Deluxe Burger
Yes.
fundraiser.
Yeah, that was funny. And then we saw each other. We had that pizza party.
Yep.
Not the one that we just had one again outside at Rundle Park, but inside at Rundle Park, we had one
Yes.
a
I
few
think we
years
caught
ago before as
Yes, Kelty and I caught the tail end of that. We had
Yeah.
planned to come, and yeah, it's
Yeah.
a small world.
It is. And I remember even then going, oh my God, I know who you are. And then here we go a few years later, I'm finding you again and going, oh yeah, I remember you. Oh, there we go. We'll never
Yeah.
let that go again.
No, cerebral palsy bringing people together for years. It's great.
Yes,
right?
it's
Yeah.
so true. There's a lot of people, even through Kids Up Front Edmonton, that we work close with, emailing with someone for months and months. And then all of a sudden I go, wait a minute, I think I know her. Because I saw her picture on social media and I was like, I do, but I never really knew her closely and I didn't know her last name. But yeah, it was funny. I was like, hey, I actually know you.
Right on. Yeah.
It's pretty
great.
cool. Well, welcome. Very excited to hear about your little new venture that you have going on here. So why don't you just start with, I don't know, introducing yourself and talk about your life
Sure.
in the CP world a little bit.
Sure. Well, it's directly connected to the agency and the venture we have going on right now. Absolutely. So, yeah, Katie, my name's Katie, and my daughter Kelty I have 3 kids. Kelty's my middle child. She was born in 2010, full term, but labor did not go as planned. And we got our CP diagnosis when she was about 6 months old. At the time, which was, I remember being very surprising to me, despite all the complications she had when she was born. I do remember it being very, like, I describe it as my jaw sort of hitting the floor, even though, now I look back and think, oh no, there were a lot of signs, especially she was my second kid, that would indicate. But yeah, I think I just, it was surprising at the time. And I think, like many parents who have children with disabilities come to understand, is that despite it at first maybe initially being quote unquote bad news, you learn pretty quickly that it's something that paradoxically you'd never change, because it's just opened up so many interesting connections and doors and experiences and perspectives. And I don't know, the list goes on and directly connects with what I'm going to talk about, what we're doing today. I mean, I wouldn't be here talking to you right now if it weren't for Kelty and everything she's brought into my life. So I know that, you know, obviously you folks are surrounded by the disabled community, but it's such a beautiful, wonderful, amazing community that I feel grateful to be directly connected to. So super cool.
Absolutely agree with that.
Yeah. So anyway, I mean, to give listeners who aren't sure what I'm talking about, I mean, the short version is that Kelty's father and I actually just this past spring, I guess it was June, started a talent agency. The difference being that the talent that we represent are all part of the disabled and neurodiverse community. And the backstory as to how we ended up doing this is directly related to Kelty. I think when she was around 5, someone had posted on Facebook a Target magazine that was from Australia.
Yeah.
And it was just a picture of the girls' clothing section, and there was a girl in a little orange crocodile walker, just standing there. There was nothing, they weren't calling out the fact that she was disabled. She was just part of the models. And I remember just, you know, going, wow, like I love that. And you never see that. And I sort of filed it away as that's just so cool. I think I screenshotted it and saved it on my computer and thought, oh, I'm going to have to show Kelty this when she's a little older. And flash forward to COVID, where we all had a little extra time on our hands.
Yes.
Absolutely.
That image of that little girl in the walker just bubbled into my mind. And I thought, you know what? I got some time. I'm just going to send a couple of pictures of Kelty to a modeling agency in I literally was sitting down. I Googled modeling agencies Edmonton, and there wasn't anything that popped up. Well, there was, but it was nothing that was actually like seemed like it was easy to contact or that represented children.
Sorry, my music here.
Sorry,
that was
no problem.
Our next video was uploading and it was stuck for the longest time, but now it's there. Okay, we're good.
No problem at all. Anyway, so yeah, I just this modeling agency, they're based in Calgary. It was a really easy application process. You literally upload a couple of photos. And I had these really nice photos from pre-COVID when we did a family photo shoot. So I just sent them off, and I got the agency got back to me right away. We set up a virtual meeting. She met Kelty. She said, yeah, we have a roster of kids. She said, Kelty's actually our first disabled kid. But you know, she's beautiful. She's interested. Like, we'll put her on the roster and we'll just kind of keep you updated on what's going on. And so we were signed with them for about 2 years, and we had like a handful of, maybe even more than a handful of experiences, many of which were good, but really left us feeling, how do I put this? I think the best way to describe it was that they being the agency and the people that we encountered along the way just didn't quite know what to do with disability. So Kelty did 4 fashion shows and 3 different photo shoots, headshot sessions and what have you. And for example, of the 4 fashion shows that we were involved in, you know, 3 of them did not have a ramp to get up the runway. You know, despite knowing that there was a child in a wheelchair, or, you know, the wardrobe choices, which are still mind-boggling to me, but again, something if you don't ever have to consider access needs would consider. But, you know, dresses that were just really difficult to get into, or that hung over the side of her wheelchair and would get caught up in the wheels. You know, also, you know, I mean, it was COVID, so things were slow. So I wasn't putting a lot of pressure on this. I just wanted it to be something that Kelty could try and have a little confidence. But jobs would come through. You know, I'd get the emails saying, you know, if your child's available, we need a girl 8 to 12 years old for a sport check ad or a combi or whatever. And I would respond whenever we were available. And there was a couple of times where there'd be questions that would come back from the agent about Kelty, and I would send a picture, a little description, and then I would just not hear anything after that.
Right.
And it became quite apparent quickly that, like, I think, like I said, I'll say it again, is they didn't quite know what to do with it, or it was just an added layer of complication that they weren't quite prepared to deal with. So I was just left feeling like, this is the way it is. This is unfortunate. I'd love to change this. And that was it. And but then we had, I booked a headshot session for Kelty with a photographer that was an international children's photographer who was coming to Calgary, which was connected to the fashion show that we were going down for. So I booked in with her, and there was a little description box, and I let her know that Kelty was in a wheelchair, and she called me right away and she said, I'm so excited to work with your daughter.
Oh.
I've phoned ahead to the studio. I've checked, like barrier-free access and what do you need and how she had just a bunch of questions. I was like, whoa, I was like, this is amazing.
Wow.
Like somebody just acknowledging access needs, like, this really
Yeah.
and rare given our experiences. So we were
Mhm.
excited, and we went down for this photo shoot, and we really, Kelty's dad, Austin, and myself spent a good chunk of the session talking to this photographer. Her name's Tilly Nelson, and she's done a lot of her career based in London in the UK, and has just in the last 3 years, I think, moved to Vancouver. But she's done work. She said to us right away, she says, oh, well, I've done a lot of photography work for this agency that reps disabled talent, and they're this and that. And she clearly had experience. And Austin and I left going, well, let's find one of those. Like, why aren't we with an agency that reps disability? And so we just looked, and there wasn't one. And we're like, oh, we don't have that in Canada. And Austin and I were at a place, Austin especially, in our careers and timing, and I'll give Austin the credit. He's the entrepreneurial spirit of the two of us. And he said, let's just do it.
Let's just do it.
Let's start one. And I was like, well, that's crazy. And I've been a teacher my whole life, and I can't do that. So the imposter syndrome was pretty real for me, and sometimes still is. And so maybe I'm new to the fashion world, but I am not new to the disabled world that we're in there. So the pieces just sort of fit. And then, like I said, it's only been 4.5 months that we've been at this, and the response is what makes it so incredible. Because I mean, I think Austin and I are a joke, but it's not even a joke, as we have yet to hear no. Like, everybody that we talk to about this, photographers, people in the industry, disabled individuals, media, everybody is just like, we need this. Yes, this is great. Like, it's just green lights all the way. And so it just reaffirms, we knew it, but it reaffirms that our world is, in Canadian media anyway, is in desperate need of this. I would argue that many places in the world need this, but we here in our sphere of influence are in need of this. And it's been really fun and exciting and interesting. And I'll let you guys jump in with questions. I could ramble on.
Oh, I know. No, that's exciting. I've been very interested to learn more about it. And I've noticed your roster growing and going through it. I'm like, oh, I know her. Oh, there's Bean, and oh, I know them. And then, of course, I even said to Carlos, I was like, maybe you should apply. Carlos.
Well, it's so fascinating to me because it just marries a lot of things in one go. So, any parent wants to make the world a better place for their kids. I would say that becomes very important when you have a child with a disability. And every parent a lot of parents, I mean, they want to do something, so you see the GoFundMes and the fundraisers and the blogs and I went through all of those things. I mean, the burger campaigns, you just want to do something to, just make the world better or give your child that confidence. And so many endeavors are so wonderful, but this is what what makes me so passionate about it, is because I feel like representation matters. The whole reason this agency exists is because I saw that little girl in a pediatric walker.
Yes.
And if I can add even one more of those images into the world, it's going to be worth it. And I know that that's like, we've already added a bunch of new images into the world. And so, I did notice as well, like, I think we have the beauty of this play on words because agents represent people, right? So our representation matters is our tagline, because in this particular scenario, or any minority group, representation matters because, and I've seen it so viscerally with Kelty, she's 12 now, she's coming of that age where it's like, why am I different? Why am I in a wheelchair? And there's been tears. And the only thing, despite the fact that I think my parenting skills should remedy everything, they don't.
I know.
And the only thing that pulls her out of a moment like that is when I pull up the internet, social media, and I go hashtag cerebral palsy adult, hashtag cerebral palsy girl, hashtag ankle foot orthotics. And I pull up images of other people in the world that look like her.
Yeah.
And it instantly changes her attitude, which is like so incredible. So the fact that that's really what our mission is with Kello Inclusive, the agency, is to just do more of that. Yeah. It's so great. And then what's interesting is, we don't have to convince folks in the disabled community that this is needed. They're all like, yeah, we'd love to see more people that look like us in a real professional, like, let's get away from the tragedy. Let's get away from the inspiration. Let's just like, we're smart, we're talented, we're awesome. We have so much to offer. Like, let's just show that because we're great. But the other people that you're trying to convince, and sometimes it doesn't take as much work as I would think, is the rest of the world that understands how important inclusion is. And we've come so far with body diversity and ethnic diversity, and I mean body size, not disability. We've come a long way in those departments, but disability still gets left behind because it's this big question mark. There's so much variety and things you need to consider. And as an agent who is also the mom of a disabled, like, you just get to know the questions to ask. If you are a person with a disability themselves, you also get to know those questions. And until you spend time in those circles, so just organically through this work, every time I go to a photo shoot, organize a photo shoot, talk to a brand, there's advocacy work built right into it, because you're talking about these things that just don't get talked about. So there's like the representation of seeing somebody in the media, but then there's this like organic built-in advocacy that is so beautiful. Like,
right. That's true. Yes. You're teaching them how to just do it even when you're not there. They'll be prepared to do it.
Yeah. And I've had questions from photographers, makeup artists, assistants, to be like, so how do you ask, or what do you say when you talk to somebody with a disability, or is the word special needs okay? I'm like, actually, they don't really love that. Like, let's not be patronizing. Let's talk, and all of that stuff that I've learned. The best tool I ever had for learning, love the medical community, but honestly, just talking to people with disabilities really taught me the most. It was only, honestly, embarrassingly, it was really only about 2 years ago that dawned on me, right? Where I thought, I'm learning all about my child and what it means to be disabled through folks who aren't disabled. I'm like, maybe I should go to the source.
I know, right?
People who actually experience it. So I, again, before this agency was a thing, I created a whole account just to follow disabled content creators and reach out and connect with. And the education I got from that was just invaluable. Like, I mean, I became a better parent, a better person. I mean, I listened, right, to people's lived experiences. And I carried that. And I, coming away from that, I just wanted to do whatever I could to amplify those voices. And again, I had all these brainstorms about, well, I could have my own social media account, and I could, I gave a talk at Teachers Convention last year to try to share some of the things I'd learned from the voices of these adults with disabilities and people with disabilities. And I got a lot of great feedback. But like, back to the agency, like, there's so many like more casual, less formal conversations that happen, because if you're going to include disabled individuals in your marketing, advertisement, media, those questions come up organically and people kind of have to listen and learn. Yeah. And that's really cool. I don't know. It's been so interesting. And then the other piece, the little trifecta. So there's the representation, there's the built-in advocacy. And then there's just like with Kelty, I see it is there's the confidence that she's gained. And then there's this connection. Like, we went to we were doing a photo shoot. We had a local Edmonton designer, Emmy Deveaux. I don't know if you've heard of her, but she provided a bunch of wardrobe. We had 9 wheelchair users at this photo shoot. And Kelty just came to kind of be part of it, be there. And everybody took a break at lunch. And I heard someone, or I read a blog, I think years ago, that said, hey, parents, you want to do something great for your kid, like, get them some disabled friends and mentors. Like, that's
yeah.
And I'm looking, and Kelty's having lunch with 6 adult wheelchair users who are beautiful and talented and confident, and like, she's just absorbing everything. And I'm like, oh, I couldn't have created this organically like this. I don't know how I would ever design this in any way. So there's just been just this, so many wonderful things.
That's beautiful. And I know that I know another young girl from Fort McMurray, Sasha. Well, I think she lives in Edmonton now, who found that same with the rolettes. She's a dancer. So she went and connected with the rolettes and did a course with them. And she found that same kind of confidence through there. And had a girl on Facebook too today reach out. She's from a little inlet somewhere here in Alberta. I can't remember the name, but she's like, are you able to connect me with somebody else with CP? I've never met anybody, and I'm like, yes, oh my gosh, I can connect you with so many people.
It's so interesting. And I actually wrote an email not that long ago to somebody, I think it was at the CP Association, I would say a couple of years ago, just to be like, hey, basically the same question, can you connect me? And she absolutely did. And I met for coffee with a few different families, and it was great, but it was difficult, as it always is, organize and get lives and connect together. But this work that the agency did, I mean, I've just seen a lot of connections come from it, or like the more events or social events or a photo shoot or whatever. And just the community aspect, even in just 4.5 months, has been beautiful. So I don't know, I just have yet to find, I mean, apart from the fact that it's a lot of work doesn't feel like work when you are passionate about it. Right. So it's just great. It's awesome. And we are set up so we did set up Kello Inclusive as a nonprofit on purpose, in the interest of trying to, open ourselves up to some of that grant money that might be available to help grow this. And we've been focused on trying to just kind of proof of concept over the last 4 months, meaning we really wanted to show what professional imagery of disabled folk can look like I said it briefly, but just getting away from those horrible, tragedy or inspiration. And that's all we get so often with disability, and trying to move away from that and really open ourselves up. And proof of concept is when you see the images, like if you look on our website and some of those, you're just like, oh, and I think it's so important to have that imagery in the world. And also we are selective we don't really advertise that we're as a nonprofit, because the last thing we want is for anybody to say, oh, they're a charity. Oh, look at those people helping those poor disabled folk. No, you'd be lucky to work with the talent on our roster because they're awesome.
Exactly.
You know what I mean? There's nothing. So, but being set up as a nonprofit also gives us that, there's lots of grant money available for endeavors that are trying to support minority groups, and especially disabled is often called out as one of them if you're supporting of that. So we're just really hoping that, through the natural interest of where the world is at and recognizing we need this, plus potentially some, funding and grants that are available as a nonprofit. This isn't about money for us. It's truly about better and more representation of disability in the way that the world needs right now. So
it's true. I was looking at stock photos today on Canva, and there was one, it was so beautiful. And I was like, oh, I want to use this one. But the little girl was in a wheelchair that isn't hers, because the arms came up so high. It was like a hospital wheelchair. And I was like, it's too bad, because the mom was so beautiful. They just looked, it was such a nice photo, but
isn't it shocking that we haven't gotten away from that? Like what my two recent examples. Well, actually, so my sister, a friend of hers that she lived with in university, he is not disabled. And he worked this was quite a few years ago now. It's probably 9 or 10 years ago, but still not that. It's the recent past. He's not disabled, and he worked for Edmonton Transit, ETS, and they wanted to do a little feature, a little commercial, of showing ETS's accessibility. So they used Paul. They did not get a wheelchair user. They put Paul in a wheelchair. And he was on the side of a bus in a wheelchair. Do you know how many calls he got being like, Paul, what happened? Were you, and and I'm thinking at the time, I remember not even really thinking too much about it. Kelty was, I don't even know if Kelty was born at this point. Maybe but just not connecting those dots. And I look at it so differently now, being like, why would you not get an actual wheelchair user? Or the show Superstore on Netflix. The fella in the wheelchair, he's not
Yeah.
he's not disabled. And I'm like, it's 2022, people. Like,
Yes.
are we not there? How are we not there?
Yeah, I always
Yeah.
look at movies and when there's somebody, with a disability, I'll research it and take a look and see if they actually are and decides whether I'm going to watch it or not. And because if it turns out to be like all that issues with Sia and her music movie where she, with autism, and even though the actress is a beautiful girl and she is a beautiful dancer and whatever, she doesn't have autism, so she should not be in that movie, and just the representation wasn't good.
It's interesting. I saw a meme that made me laugh, but it was calling this exact point out. It was, how did it go? It was basically, there was an actor. It was an actor who was meant to be playing a blind person, talking to a blind person, being like, so can you tell me what it's like to, not be able to see when and the blind person is talking, and the caption underneath is like, why don't we just cast the visually impaired
like
person?
why not?
And it's just a question that we don't seem to ask. But anyway, that's kind of when we started this, our vision was modeling. We thought, let's just stay in our lane, like let's stick to, but it's very clearly turned into more than that. And I think it's again an acknowledgement of almost every arena of media is recognizing the importance. Like, we've gotten in 4 short months, we've gotten some cool things have happened. Like we've gotten calls from casting directors for TV shows in Ontario. We've gotten contacted by for voice acting auditions for cartoon series of characters that will be disabled, and they want to cast disabled voice actors. We've had like Vancouver Fashion Week, so there's the clothing and fashion side of it, has reached out to us to ask what we've got there. We've had disabled individuals who just found us organically. Like we recently signed a former Paralympian, actually, she who just was in Googling inclusive agency, and she was like, I couldn't find one, but you guys popped up, and I'm really excited. So there's and like, so it, and then there's the content creation, which for disabled folk is actually a really accessible form of, like there's a lot of disabled influencers, content creators out there, because the access piece, physical access piece is so, obviously you're in the comfort of your own home or where you are most comfortable, and then you're creating content. But some feedback we've gotten is, it's getting to the point with influencing and content creation where agents actually make a real difference in being able to broker brand deals and actually support making a living off this. And we didn't, when we first started this, I thought, I know nothing about influencing.
Right.
But you learn really quickly because it's needed. There's a gap there. And again, we just want to support, people being able to increase representation, make a living, and actually get disabled folk to feel like this is a viable and sought after and important career path. Because, some of the feedback we've gotten is, I didn't even think that I could do that. Like, I didn't even think that would be an option for me because I'm a wheelchair user, or because of this, or because of, and just knowing that even has become an option is pretty exciting. So
really is.
Yeah.
Carlos, you should.
Hey, feel free. Always. We're always looking, right? It is. I mean, just and we are careful it has to be something of it, just like anybody, just because you look a certain way, or you are disabled or whatever, doesn't mean you're going to be a great actor or even want to.
Exactly.
Like I know that I check myself often. I was very excited for Kelty to get into modeling, but I would check in with her and be like, do you want to do this? Like, is this fun for you? Like, and she does like it, but you have to, but when you have that, we just actually applied to a pretty large grant with the Canadian Media Fund. And we were just talking, and some of the questions that were being asked is to describe like, why would we, as trying to do what we're doing, need money? And it's like, well, you know what, the barriers to access for a disabled person, it's like, it's so cyclical. It's like, we know we need more inclusion, but because they don't consider that a viable career path. They're not doing the training. They're not doing, they're not seeking it out. So then when you go to find somebody, they don't have nearly the length of a resume of their non-disabled peer. So, to be able to, if we can also, help with training and getting better. So if someone genuinely has an interest, like Kelty wants to be a model, but, we now want to be able to have some extra, like try to bridge that gap of why she would not have the same amount of experience as a non-disabled peer, because it wasn't even an option. So parents didn't even think about it, or, to fill some training voids and have people actually, pursue it in a real way to kind of balance the scales a little bit, I think is also another kind of cool piece of this. Carlos, if you want to get on board, please.
I'll definitely
Fill
check
in
it
an
out.
intake form.
I'll definitely check it out, because I used to love acting and drama. I took a lot of drama courses. I took a lot of acting stuff. I took
Amazing.
a lot of stuff like that. So
You have training.
Yeah.
Rare. Like as if I was filling in this form, it was like often for good reason, people come to us without a lot of experience or training. You have
I do.
acting in your background?
I did a lot of acting, and I wrote a play. So I have done a lot of stuff that I done in
So
the
you must
past.
know Carly Neese then.
Yes, I do. Carly.
Yes.
I do know Carly.
She's not on our roster, but we love her. She helped orchestrate. She's like she was part of one of our photo shoots, and I don't know, Kelty actually met her and super connected with her. But anyway, we went and saw her play. Play the Tune to A. And oh man, was that a friend of mine whose son has cerebral palsy sent me the link, and I read the description, and it was like a coming of age play of a adolescent in junior high who has cerebral palsy, and I was like, oh my god, this play was written for Kelty. What is that? It's amazing.
Exactly, right? Yeah.
But it was again just before this agency thing kind of came to fruition, and we went and saw it, and it like representation yet again for the win, because she saw Carly doing her thing on stage and just like rapt attention. Like this was like so amazing for her to see. So anyway, I didn't mean to sidetrack the conversation.
That's fine.
But this is more of that in every way possible.
Every way possible. Yeah. And if people come to you with no training, do you refer them to some classes, or do you guys do any bits of training?
Great question. I have no business training anyone, because I not an actor or a model myself. However, we're working on that right now. Actually, so that's some of the grant money that we're applying for, is to try to get some access to training and stuff. But again, with in this, like, part of our spiel is like, like when I submitted like 6 voice acting auditions for an animated series. And of the 6, only 1 had actually had experience with doing any kind of voice acting. But I left a note along with the auditions that basically just said, just so you know, these are like, most of this is the first time doing this. For these reasons, we're working on bridging that gap. But like equal opportunity has not really been a thing in this industry for a while. So again, as an agent, if I'm doing my job, that advocacy work and that explanation and that bringing people up to speed on that, because anybody that views, someone in that position is, oh, well, why don't you have as much experience, or why are you even doing this if you're just entering it, 25 years old to try voice acting for the first time or whatever. They need that kind of education. And the response I got was great. It was like, yeah, absolutely. Thank you so much for submitting these, and it's just a little bit of calling it out, and people get it, and hopefully we'll work to change it as we talk about it more.
I think
I'll definitely get your email, because I know of a teacher that might be able to be useful for your company. She might be retired, but I'm pretty sure she does a lot of volunteer work still, and a lot of stuff going on the side. She's a acting singer teacher, and she's a really good teacher. She taught me great things myself.
Oh, that's awesome. And well, then you would know yourself how powerful it is to have someone who just has worked with folks who are disabled or have disability. It's a big difference, right? Like it's just like that photographer who I, kind of sparked all the inspiration for all of this was just the fact that she'd done it before, and she asked
Yeah.
a few questions that no one else was asking.
Yeah.
And it was hugely powerful, right? Or, you know, Kelty had a teacher, it was last year, she's in grade 6, and she came home and she was so excited. And I was like, what's going on? She's like, we had a substitute today. I was like, kids usually hate substitutes.
Yeah.
Like, she was in a wheelchair. And I was like, oh, amazing. Like, you know, like just,
Wow.
you know, I don't
That's
even know what
awesome.
she learned that day, except for the fact that like there was a teacher in a wheelchair and she had never seen that before.
That's
And I
That's
I
awesome.
loved it. I loved it.
That's awesome.
awesome.
Yeah.
That is very cool.
That's awesome.
So your roster that you so people, is it just visible disabilities, or is it also invisible disabilities, neurodiverse? I know you've mentioned
What a great
neurodiverse.
question. Austin and I have recently been having this conversation a lot. So, I mean, what we know for sure is that there is no agency in Canada. There's a few agencies in Canada, small few,
Mhm.
that would consider themselves to be inclusive agencies. And what that looks like generally could be sexual diversity, body size diversity,
Right. Yeah.
ethnic diversity, and disability is a little part of that.
Yeah.
Which is great. We are the only agency that exclusively, like, we're exclusively inclusive with
Yeah.
disability. We've also included neurodiversity in there, which we think is a really important part of what we're doing.
Mhm.
However, one thing that's really important right now at the stage we're at is the visible difference,
Mhm.
right? Like I think that having autism or ADHD or generalized anxiety disorder or schizophrenia or any other, like, yes, the support is needed and the advocacy work is needed in that arena just as much. But in changing kind of social attitudes about physical disability, mobility aids, hearing aids, you know, Down syndrome, for example, that genetically, the visual appearance that comes with genetic differences there, you know, that piece of representation, I think right now is our focus, because I think the world needs to be brought up to speed on that at first. And the biggest reason is just this question of access, right? Like, this would not be surprising to you, but that whole like medical model versus the social model, like, it's not what's wrong with the person who's disabled, it's what's wrong with the world. And the world doesn't even think about changing until they are engaging with someone who has those access needs. And not that they don't apply to the diverse, they absolutely do, but in an image, in a picture, we want that to be the forefront. We want to see those visual differences.
Yeah.
So does that mean we would not rep somebody that was neurodiverse? Absolutely not. We think that support and advocacy work is there. But as far as the images that we want to get out there, at least what we're kind of really focused on is the visibly different and visible disabilities, which often is physical. If that makes sense. If that's
100%.
Makes
Yeah.
sense. Makes sense.
Yeah, that makes sense to me. Oh, I just think it's amazing, honestly.
Oh, well, thank you. You know, it's interesting because it's truly like I said, like, people who get it so easily, like parents of kids with disabilities, disabled individuals, people who work within the disabled community, like, everyone's like, yeah, duh. And that doesn't surprise me, because we're all up to speed on that and probably have been for a while. It's the response from the outs, like the brands and the photographers and people who aren't there. That's what's been the most exciting part, because everybody, not that you look like a real jerk if you're like, we don't need that, you know. But it's been more organic and real than that. Like, people are kind of going, oh, I didn't even think, that's so interesting, and I've learned so much, and absolutely. And, you know, and it's just been, I don't know, that is the coolest part of this, is convincing the people that we knew we had to change minds, and even people like, you know, and I'm the first one to admit, like, my slogan on my coffee mug at work is like, know better, do better, right? Like, honestly, probably when I first met you, Leah, like, I was doing all the things, like, I referred to myself as a special needs parent. I centered myself in the disabled experience. I thought I knew all the answers to all the questions because I had a disabled child. Well, I'm not disabled. I don't know. I know my experience, but I don't know, you know, and it's taken me years of learning and growth and fixing and editing my own internal dialogue to change. And there's probably still a lot of learning I have to do. But watching a few people that I've met through these experiences, watching them change, even just a smidge, even if it's just deleting the euphemisms, or, saying wheelchair user instead of, bound to a wheelchair, like little tiny things.
Yep.
I feel so good about those changes that I get to witness, which is cool. And then the learning I do along the way as well.
No,
Yeah.
I still learn a lot too.
Yeah.
Just things that I don't think about. I posted like an article on makeup that was the disabled community said was accessible, like it was adaptive, like it was easy to hold. And then somebody had replied and said, but what about the smell? And what about, like, is it sensitive for your skin? Because some people are very sensitive to smell. And I was like, of course, like I never thought of that. And so it's not fully inclusive until, people got to think about the sensory things as well. And I was like, yeah, thank you very much for pointing that out. And
that's the right mindset, right? Like, it's a growth mindset that is important to understand that we can all do better.
yeah,
I have a great story, like thinking I'm like, so this was literally like, I don't even know, not that long, 6 months ago. So I think I've learned so much. I've been talking to the disabled community. I'm getting better. I've gotten better with my language. I'm understanding all the things. And I'm like, okay, I'm on to this. So I showed Kelty this presentation that I was going to give at Teachers Convention earlier this year. And I thought, well, if I'm going to talk about disability, I better run it by my disabled kid. And
right.
so she goes through this PowerPoint with me. She said, Mom, I love it. It's great. She had some feedback that was awesome, but what divulged after was a conversation about, she would ask, and that answer hasn't changed, but it's gotten more detailed over the years when she asked me, Mom, why am I disabled? At first it used to be, oh, there was an accident when you were born. And, as she's gotten older, I've been able to answer that question. So again, after this presentation, she asked me, Mom, why am I disabled? And so we start having this conversation about, everything was good, but there was an accident when you were born, and, there was oxygen that was cut off to your brain. And, and we're talking about this, and she kind of paused and she said, Mom, if I have a baby, will they be disabled? And I immediately said, oh, honey, no, there's nothing genetic about this. There's nothing, to say that your child will be disabled. And she bursts into tears. And I was like, what have I said? Oh my God. And it took me a little while. And I said, Kelty, I said, do you want your child to be disabled? And she nodded and she said, yes. And I was like, of course you do. And I'm like, and then I said, maybe. I was like, your kid might be disabled, like you. And she was like, good. And I thought, so interesting. What? I'm such a-hole. I'm like, I just made the assumption that having a child with a disability is this tragic fate that no one would ever want. And I said to her in that moment, I apologized. And I said, no, honey, I said, of course your child could be disabled. And I would be honored to have a disabled grandchild one day. And having you is the best thing that's ever happened in my life. And why would I ever? And I was just, but it shook me because I was like,
catch yourself sometimes. Yeah, absolutely.
I didn't even think about that assumption that how that would come across to her.
Yeah.
And so as much learning as we all do, there's always room.
There is. Even you telling it, I was like, I'm trying to think of what the issue was. And I'm like, what would her issue have been? And then I went, oh, okay, I get it. Cause yes.
Oh, it was a huge moment for me. I was just like, whoa.
Yeah.
I think I know so much. I know nothing. I'm so sorry, honey.
Because society still thinks that having a disability is wrong.
Yeah, I know.
So when you have a child, you always ask, I want my child to grow and to be healthy and to have the full length of birth and to be fine. But what happens if it's not the right length of birth, or if it's not, or if it's like Kelty, which she had complications after birth and she ends up having CP. It's okay because she's still living a full life. So what's wrong with that, right?
And some would argue, for our family, a better life. Like I fully feel grateful to have her in my life and everything I've learned. I say all the time, people always ask me, of my 3 kids, how's Kelty doing? Right. And it's always well-intentioned. They want to check. She's the one with disability. They want to check in. And I'm always like, she's fine. She's actually my healthiest kid. She's the most mentally robust, optimistic, happy all the time. Yeah. She's never sick. She literally never gets sick. She's just I'm like, I always respond with, Kelty's fine. Jack, on the other hand, asthma. We had him in Emerge. He's always sick. Yeah, like he's yeah, I'm like, but it's so interesting that like she truly is my healthiest kid. Like I would say that in so, even despite, you know, the disability piece, like whatever, that's just who she is. It's great. Like I don't know.
It's so true. I think that's going to open up a lot of eyes.
Yeah, and I don't know if it's the chicken or the egg. Like I often think, so I have a 14-year-old, right? And she, you know, as you know, I mean, all teenagers, but she, you know, there's anxiety, there's insecurity, there's, you know, like there's lots of stuff. And Kelty is just like the most chill, everything's good. Life, like Kelty, we have a shirt that says best day ever, because every time I get home, it's like, how was your day? Best day ever.
Best ever.
Like, I was so worried about her going into junior high. She started grade 7. Like first day in, I was like, how was school? Like you're, you know, she's in her power chair, a lot of more independence this year, whatever. She's like, I love it. It's great. Like, what like, what are you worried about?
Deal.
Best. I have friends. Everyone loves me. I'm awesome. Like,
did she have to go to a new school, or was she staying in this? Oh, so it was a whole new, my daughter started grade 7 this year as well, but it was just moving upstairs from the K to 9 school,
brand new school. And again, not disabled. Grade 7 was the worst year of my life.
Right.
And for many people, so I'm like projecting, thinking like, okay, I had a terrible grade 7 year. I'm not disabled. I didn't have the extra layer of people feeling different or whatever. And she just like, she's connected with a couple of kids who are not wheelchair users, but have some neurodiversities. And like, she's got, like, the kids never had trouble making friends. And like, so when I think, so again, chicken or the egg, like, is she so mentally robust because she's had challenges that she's had to deal with? Did I just luck out and get a kid who just deals with stuff really well, who also happens to be in a, I have no idea, but I'm very grateful because she's,
I know, right?
Yeah.
No, I'm thankful. I know grade 7, I know I was worried about it too, because I mean, I spent 6 years with my daughter, coming home early all the time, missing so much school from anxiety, and then trying to figure out, and then we got into ADHD diagnosis and anxiety and depression. And I was so worried about this year, but she is thriving, and drama is helping for sure, like her confidence. And she's been helping a girl that has moved here from Ukraine. So she's helping her get through. And I'm like, it's giving her that little bit of confidence. And it's just, grade 7 has started off so great. And
I'm so happy to hear that. Same here. Like, it takes a weight off when your kids are doing okay in school. And you know, I had, and Carlos, maybe you can confirm this, but or weigh in. But I remember years ago, again, Kelty was quite small, and I was speaking to a woman who has cerebral palsy, and I just was asking her, like, what was your experience like in school? Like, what was that like for you? And she had said to me something that made me feel really good. She said, I didn't have a lot of friends. She said, but the friends I did have were tight, like solid, just good friendships. And that just hit me because, again, seeing my older daughter, she has lots going for, there's a lot, like, she's great, but at the same time, like, the friendship can be, like, girl drama and not trusting, and who's just stressed in that way. And I have never, and Kelty doesn't have, she's not friends with everybody, but the core group she does have is just so tight, like they are tight. And I just affirmed what this woman had said to me, and I thought, having all the friends doesn't make life necessarily better or easier. What was your experience?
Well, when I went to elementary, I didn't have many friends when I was in elementary. Up to like when I was in 7th grade, I started to get more friends. But as you just mentioned, with the experience of Kelty, with the friends I have now, it's very, very tight, even here in Canada and in Mexico, because I was born in Mexico, so I'm friends over there and I have friends over here, but they're very tight, because we grew up as truthful as we can, and my family always used to say, if your personality is open and you are open with your personality and just the way you are, people will just come to you. You don't even have to make an effort. Just people will come to you, regardless of whether you have crutches, wheelchair, a walker, or whatever it is. And I found that out when I first came to Canada. I was really afraid of what's going to happen. Am I going to have friends? Am I not going to have friends? I didn't have the best of luck back at home. I did have a big amount of friends, but it wasn't like a huge amount of friends. It was just a very tight friends. Am I going to have the same situation? And my mom said to me, just be you, just be yourself. And when I came to Canada, I was just myself, and I started to see that people came to me. People just wanted to know who I was, how I was, and then people wanted to be friends. People started talking, and then that's what happened. So,
Yeah. That affirms what I had heard. And, when I think about it, at least with what I've seen with Kelty, is like, there's no other reason that someone would want to be friends with Kelty other than the fact that they just love her.
Yep.
You know what I mean? Whereas, I'm a high school teacher. I see it all the time. People will be friends with certain people because of whatever status they thinks it brings, or, I want to be friends with the sports team because then this or that, and there's always that sort of layer of like, oh, can I trust why someone wants to be in my company? And Kelty's hard to worry about that. And nor have I as her parent. I'm like, she had a friend over last weekend, and I just think, oh gosh, this is just so organic. Like they just want to be here because they love Kelty, and that's that's how it is. And so that is again one of a little hidden perk to this living as a person with a disability is like, despite all the stigma that society has, if you have somebody that's your friend, it's because they love you, and that to be able to trust in that friendship, it's very cool.
That's so true.
Oh, I love that. That's great.
Yeah.
Well, this has gone by very fast.
Very
There's so
fast.
much to talk about, but we do have to ask you about life without limits and, your perspective, and whether it's from your own life or from being a mom to Kelty, about what life without limits means to you, and if you think you're living your life without limits.
What a great question.
It's our favorite.
I don't know. I'm going to circle it back to Kelty because it's so like, it's just, so I'm a high school teacher. I've taught English most of my career, and in English class, the word paradox comes up a lot. Like you have to learn, it's one of the vocabulary words or whatever. And it's maybe not quickly, but it's become my favorite word in the English language because on a really high level, the definition of paradox is something that makes sense, but doesn't make sense. And when we talk about having whether you're the person with a disability or disability adjacent as a parent would be somebody that's got a close relationship, yes, there's all kinds of limits that get put on your life. And so it shouldn't make sense that those limits are freeing, but they are. Like it's the perfect example of a paradox. Like everything that has had to change in my life because Kelty is in it. The kind of house we buy, the kind of vacations we take, the kind of things we can do, all of those quote unquote limits have been so powerful as learning tools for me to look at our world, what I value in it, what I'd like to see changed, how I connect with other people, the empathy that comes from just seeing the world through that lens. Has been so freeing for me. Like I jokingly say it, but I really say it because I think it's true. Like without having lived without having a Kelty in my life, I'd be a jerk. Like I think that I would be a jerk because the amount of situation, and I don't claim to ever know someone else's lived experience, but having the lens of disability in my life has allowed me to look at people's all kinds of challenges with so much more empathy. My best example of that is, we had professional development teachers last year, and the entire thing was anti-racism, which was wonderful. And we had a professor from the university talking a lot, and there's a lot of discussion about racism and anti-racism. And, I asked the question because I'd been thinking it all the way along. I said, I'm like very close to the center of the wheel of privilege, right? Like I'm a non-disabled, educated, white person, all those things. And I said, but because of Kelty in my life, she's given me this window into minority experience,
Sure,
whatever that
yeah.
looks like.
Mhm.
And I asked the professor, I said, is it appropriate for me to use those experiences to kind of try to understand what it might be for someone who was not born in the center of that wheel of privilege? And she kind of said, absolutely. She says, that's what we all need more of, is to,
Yeah.
so to circle back to your question, the limitations, I'm using air quotes here, those have been the most freeing for me because they give you perspective.
Mhm.
And that is what leads to change. Like, that's the most important thing. So the paradox is, yeah, the limits I've learned so much that they're actually the most freeing thing that's ever happened to
Mhm.
me.
Oh,
So
that's a great answer.
Well,
Appreciate
thank you for the answer. It's
That
really
is a
great.
really good answer.
It's a really good answer.
Yeah, no, and I like that because it touches on a little bit about being an ally. Like for me, I'm able-bodied, I might have ADHD, but I'm, otherwise, and I'm, privileged as well. But yeah, it's that, how do I sort of support, the voices, and this is part of it, giving them the platform, but
Yep.
not trying not to speak for them, but just
Yep.
sort of like help amplify. Yeah, I saw
Yeah.
a TikTok the other day of this big gym bro, and he was saying about how he saw this, heavy set woman in a wheelchair at the gym, and he just stopped and stared at her and thought, wow, how inspiring she is to be there doing that. And that he had tears in his eyes. And then he told her how inspiring she was, and she was so thankful. And I commented and I said, are you sure? Because
Ew.
like I said, I'm not disabled, but from what I know, they don't want to be inspiring. You shouldn't be inspired that she's doing something that everybody does every day.
Yeah,
Like
yeah.
to stop and do that, I said, you're actually making it worse. Like just carry on. Like, don't worry about her. Like,
But
and he was so moved, and I'm like, oh my God.
oh, it's so great that you called that out, because from what I understand and what I would imagine, and actually what I've seen with Kelty, is that when you look at someone disabled and you call them or react to them as though they're inspirational, it seems lovely. But it's just like the story I told about, Kelty having a disabled child and her being sad about that. Laced in that is the assumption that being disabled is tragic. And so just the simple fact that you exist and have made it to the gym, like living your life as just going about your life and not being inspirational, implies that your life is awful and that you're still living it. Your life's crap, but you're still showing up to the gym. So good for you. Like, that's the problem, right? So that's such a great story. I'm glad you called that out.
I'm like, it just was, I was just like, ooh, the way he was gushing about it, and about how he was saying, oh, I made her life because I told her how inspirational she was, and she was so thankful. And it's like, she was probably just trying to be nice back, but really inside, she's like, just shut up.
What they don't understand is they're putting much more pressure and much more insecure, well, not insecurity, depending on how your mind is set, but for a person who's not fully confident yet, what you're saying is you're an inspiration. Yeah, you might think it's a confidence boost, but it's not, because you're putting more pressure on the person with a disability on it, and so that person becomes more pressure and more pressure, that if he or she achieves what she's looking to achieve, when she doesn't achieve it, she or he doesn't achieve it, he will go down instead of going up. But we know that we're all going to fall eventually, and we have to get up, right? So the more inspiration they're putting us to do, or they're putting us on a little box, the more dangerous it is for the person with a disability. That's what I think, personally.
And I gotta believe it's pretty othering, right? To just like, if you were if either one of, well, if I was just walking to the mall and somebody came up and told me I was inspiring, I'd be like, well, what, am I weird? Like, what? Like, othering.
Why?
Like, what's wrong with me? Like, what do you mean I'm inspiring? Right? I'm just living my life. So that I mean, I've seen it with Kelty. We were in I'm sure you have stories. I
Yeah.
stumbled across some blog or website that was like things abled or ableists say, or, you know, and
Yeah.
it was people with disabilities just talking about all of the comments that they've had over the years. And we've had a few, but we were it was the first time for me, we were in West Edmonton Mall in a clothing store, and these two women came up to Kelty, and they just got down and they looked at her and they said, "Oh, I am so sorry. And we will pray for you.
Oh,
We will pray
Oh
for you. And
man.
we are
Yeah.
so sorry."
Yeah.
And Kelty looked at me like they had three heads. She was like,
oh,
What?
what is
Yeah.
happening? And I was like, I kind of said, I mean, you got to be nice, like the man in the
Yeah.
gym that you just described, or sorry, the woman in
Yeah.
the gym, pardon me. that
yeah.
you described. You know, I was kind of like, thank you, but she's fine. And
Yeah.
I kept confusing her a little
Yeah.
bit, like, she's fine. Like, we're just shopping. So,
Yeah.
you know,
Yeah.
and it was,
Oh my God.
anyway, it was just my first moment of that. And it's very othering, and it's very like, there's pressure, because Kelty's going, pray for me. Like, why?
We're
What?
fine. Like, she's
Fine.
I'm not. Kelty's probably like, I'm not dying.
Yeah,
I'm
sorry.
good.
We said afterwards, we joked, and I said, Kelty, we'll pray for them. Don't worry.
Yes.
But
Oh my God.
anyway, yeah.
That's
What a
fun.
great conversation that you folks are.
Oh, this was
Oh,
awesome. No, I
yeah.
was looking forward to this so much. And yeah, we'll have to have Kelty on if she
Yeah,
is
absolutely.
interested.
I will put it past her. She gets a little bit shy when it comes to stuff like this. She also hates it when I tell stories about her. So
Oh, I know my daughter. I can't even. Yeah, so many times. I'll just mention a little. We ran into somebody. We went to Pumpkins After Dark, and there was this Star Wars guy there. And I said, "Oh, that was the guy that was at your birthday like years ago."
Yeah.
And when we walked by him, I said, "I think you did her birthday party a little while ago." And he's like, "Oh, wow, that's so cool." And we walked away, and she was like, "Oh my God." And I'm
Just
like,
mortified. Mom.
what? I said, it was your idea to have the party. Like, you liked Star Wars at that time. And like, I went all out for you. And she was so embarrassed.
Just don't
If she
talk
listened to
about
this podcast at all, she would be so embarrassed that I mentioned her every single time.
Yeah, well, we had a radio interview about Kello Inclusive with CBC, and Kelty came with me, and she did great. She answered the questions, but I finished it off by telling this story, and I'm going to do it again because it's such a sweet story. But you know, like, but she was like head in the lap, like, "Mom, I hate you." But it really drives the point home, and probably a good way to close about why this agency is so important. So this was last year. She was talking about this classmate of hers who she had a crush on, and she wanted to write a note to them to let them know. And we were talking about it, and I said, "You know, honey, you have to understand that you might write this note and they might not reciprocate, they might not respond, like, just be prepared." And she was kind of like, "Okay, it's fine." So she goes off to school with her note in her bag, and she gets home from school that day. I said, "Did you pass the note?" And she said, "Yeah." And I said, "What did they say?" She said, "Nothing." And I said, "Well, honey," I was like, "Are you okay?" And she's like, "Yeah." She's like, "I'm famous." And I was like, "Yeah, girl, like, absolutely." Like, she's like, "I'm not worried about what they like." It was sort of like their loss. I'm famous.
Exactly.
I love it.
Right. And I thought, okay,
Exactly.
this is why we are doing this. This
Yes.
is why this agency exists, so that you can tell people you have a crush on who aren't interested in you.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter because you're famous, and who
Yeah,
cares?
it doesn't matter.
Yeah,
I got a
famous.
photo shoot tomorrow anyway. See you later. I got to go wash my hair. See you later.
That's exactly
Oh,
it.
I love that. Yeah. No, if she ever, run it by her. It'd be
I will.
great. I've always talked about having somebody little from that perspective, like youth, come on and talk. If she ever is interested, you just let
I
us
will.
know.
I will
Yeah,
let
please
you know.
do. Please do.
For
I
sure.
would,
Yeah.
we would love to
Great.
talk to her for sure.
Mhm.
Absolutely. Well, thank you so much, Katie, for
Yes.
being here. It's been
very
such a delight to be able to
Mhm.
hear what you're doing, and with this wonderful agency that you have. It's fantastic, and I would encourage people to look at it. If you know of anybody who has disability who might be interested in looking at this, please make sure
That would
to
be great. And I
have a
should
look
say
at it.
also, like, we talked a lot about, you know, disabled folk in front of the camera, quote unquote, but we are also, you know, it's important to us to have people on the other side
On the
too.
other side.
Disabled photographers, makeup artists, hairstylists,
I know.
you know, anybody in
No
this
one in
industry.
Calgary. Yes.
Yeah. So we had one of the photo shoots we did in Vancouver. We found a makeup artist who was a wheelchair user, and like that is also highly important to us as well. Is just anybody in that industry to be connected. So anybody listening to this that has any interest, check out our website. It's Kello Inclusive, Kello inclusive.org. All the information to connect with us personally and to apply or to ask questions, it's all available on the website.
Perfect. I'll put that in the show notes for sure.
Cool.
We'll have that on the show notes for sure.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much again. And thank you for our listeners to take the time to listen to this show. It's been a delight. It's been a pleasure. Thank you, Leah, for once again approaching Katie to be a part of
Glad
our
I
show.
did.
Thank you so much for that. And so please, the rest of the listeners, continue to support us and have yourself a wonderful day. And we'll see you the next time. And don't
thanks so
forget to
much.
live your life without limits.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.